Hello and welcome to ClapperCast. I'm your host as always, Carson Timar, and today I'm once again joined by the good old Nicolò Grasso as we finally step into the world of Godard with a review for Vivre Sa Vie, one of Godard's most famous films, 1962, very early in his career, looking at the life of a young woman as she tries to make a living in Paris through 12 different little vignettes from her time in Paris. This is a film that blew us away. Even though I am not necessarily a big scholar of Godard, Nick has certainly seen a lot of his work, and today we're going to break down why this film is so successful, what makes it such a special film even within Godard's filmography, and discuss the legendary filmmaker as a whole. We're going to get into his legacy, if people watch Godard enough, and where we would recommend a new individual starts when watching his career. Again, thank you so much for liking and supporting us here on the podcast. Go ahead and make sure to give this a thumbs up. Now, without further ado, let's get to our Jean-Luc Godard episode on Vivre Sa Vie. Okay, hello, Nick. Thank you so much for joining me today to finally discuss some Godard on the podcast, a filmmaker we've not touched. I've been having him on the schedule, and then for whatever reason, it gets bumped a little bit, but here we're finally talking about Godard, specifically talking about his third feature film, which I believe here in English is called Live Your Life or whatever it's called. I'm not even going to pronounce. I know it's a simple name. I'm not going to try to pronounce it. I went to speech therapy. If you bully me in the comments, you're bully. Like, it's kind of unwoke.
Me
it's not
too,
cool
actually.
to bully me. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, you say that and then you speak perfectly like Italian Indian, so let's calm down, I guess. Actually, I never really learned how to fully speak. Nick got, I think, to the proficiency level, but alas, talking about Godard, specifically this film, which follows in 12 different little increments, this woman's journey in Paris, living her life, trying to make money, trying to find her place. I love this film. I'll be really honest. I have not seen a lot of Godard. We'll actually get to that conversation here towards the end. But I've seen Breathless, and then I saw this. And Breathless I thought was fine. I was like, it's good. It's not bad at all. But it was like, it didn't necessarily capture my heart and spirit how this film did. I think this is genuinely like a 5-star masterpiece. So I'm so excited to be talking about it. But Nick, as our guest today, I'll turn it over to you first. What are your opening thoughts on our film today?
It's a classic for good reasons amongst Godard's filmography. I don't even remember when I watched it during my Godard journey, because it's been a long journey for me getting to love and respect Godard. When I was starting to watch more movies, of course, like you hear about Breathless, you hear about some of those titles. I want to say I think the first one I watched was actually Band Apart, because it's also like connected to the Tarantino production company that was inspired by it and blah blah blah. But Vivre Sa Vie, I watched it for the first time almost 7 years ago, and I really liked it, but there was something missing. Maybe it was just like the period I watched it. I was watching too many movies. I don't know. So I really liked it, didn't love it. Revisiting it today, I have to agree with you. So I've seen like over 30 films of Godard at this point, and I have so many more that I want to watch. But this is undeniably one of his finest films, because it's so human. And I say this as someone who loves Godard. He can be extremely cold. Even something like Breathless. Breathless has it's an emotional story, but it's told purposefully in a very detached way. You have a sociopath at its core. Jean-Paul Belmondo plays a sociopath criminal, but in here you're following Nana, I think it's called, played by Anna Karina, who's just her face. You just look at some people's faces and you say those were meant for cinema. Her face here was meant for cinema. And it's one of those movies where the camera loves the main actress. From the opening shots where it's just the back of her head and you're hearing her voice, up until the last wide shot, there's so many emotions running through this film. There's so much passion. There's so much style, and Godard has always been a stylish filmmaker. He's been a film critic, a student of cinema before actually making films himself. And you can see that he knows how films work, and he wanted to make something different. And I find it quite tragic that in 2026, I'm rewatching Vivre Sa Vie and thinking, damn, if someone made a movie like this with those choices today, it would be hailed as something like transcendent, so different, so bold. It's like he was doing this in 1962. Okay, there's some insane parts in here. We'll definitely get into the details, but it's so well made, so well crafted. But most importantly, to close my opening thoughts, it is about this woman who's going through a hard period in life. The film never really judges her in a way that I appreciated her. I actually ended up watching because I was like, oh, let's just watch. I have some time before the recording. Let's just watch like a couple of early Godard shorts. I never did watch them. And the second short film he made, is kind of about a woman who unwillingly becomes a prostitute, and it's not good. Don't watch it. I would not recommend. Like, don't waste those 9 minutes of your time. Do something else. Cook some bread. I don't know. But it's also good to see him be more accepting in a way of sex workers, more less judgy. This was also based on a book that was about sex work in France, like prostitution during the 1960s after some change. There's a whole sequence, probably talk about it, where it gets full into the history and the rules and regulations behind this. But yes, I really really love this watch, and I'm very excited to delve into some of the scenes. And I'm happy you like it as well. You love
Oh
it
my
as well,
gosh.
Carson. Warms my
Of
heart.
course I love this. No, there's so much to get into with just even what you mentioned. And I feel like a kid on Christmas morning running down and it's like, what present should we open first? Let's start with Anna Krennic, because I agree. She's phenomenal here. To put the image of the Passion of the Joan of Arc on the big screen, which is, in my
Yes.
opinion, the greatest performance ever put to film. I truly think it's transcendent, and that film is transcendent. If you've just heard of it kind of in like passing, or you've seen references like this film, go check it out, because I think it genuinely stands, the test of time. That is a very bold image then put and then cut to your actress and expect that actress to then feel like a good performance. But Anna Krenna kills it. She's a a new generation of this performance within the Passion of Joan of Arc, in a way that you like, yes, the camera falls in love with her, but you have to fall in love with this performance. It is a phenomenal performance. And even just sitting there in the cinema in that scene, as the tears swell her eyes and she starts to give that little bit of a cry, the emotional like power and regulation of this character. She is very funny, she's very confident, but you also can see like her insecurities and her questions and her doubts. It's not just like a great written character. And I am be fascinated, because I know Godard has a very up and down relationship, let's say, with feminism and with how the portrayal of women throughout his films. This feels like a really, really thoughtful character put to screen. It was also, Anna Krenna was his wife at the time, so like I'm
Mhm.
sure that helps with some of the love for the camera. But I thought she really delivered. I agree completely with what you say about it's a human film, but I think it's so interesting in a production standpoint, because watching this, I immediately went, "Oh my god, it's like After the Hunt," in the fact that it's consistently with the film putting distance between you and the audience, just like After the Hunt. When we talked about this, how it made
Mhm.
so many abrasive camera choices and cinematography choices, and everyone on Twitter was like, "Oh my god, I can't believe Luca was so embarrassing. He forgot how to shoot a film." This film does exactly that. Obviously, I wish had this film in context for when I saw After the Hunt, because I would have put those two films in conversation with each other production wise. But there are so many shots here from behind someone. The camera in the middle of a conversation will trail off and look outside a window and get distracted by pedestrians. It's a film that is consistently building a wall between, not like you can't engage with the space, but it feels like you're actually in the space, but like as an observer rather than a participant actually following this woman's life or in this woman's shoes, which I think then seems like it would be counterproductive to this conversation we're having, of like having empathy and having human emotions and having this connection. But I didn't feel that way like at all. I think it really heightened the experience, because it does put her in a role where like you are kind of judging her, but it's never like a cruel judgment where you come out that she's like a horrible person. Instead, you really observe, and throughout these selective scenes where you don't necessarily get, ABC, you get AC, and then you jump maybe to F and then H in her
Mhm.
story. Um, you start to see, and you can really understand that pull of her desire, and as she turns to something like sex work, which I do appreciate that they also show that it's organized. There is like a world here that is not just this, oh, dirty women on the street, as I think some people would portray. You really understand where she is coming from with, number one, needing money, but also the freedom of that, the autonomy that gives. So I think putting the audience in the role as observer rather than participant was actually really effective for me. And then finally, I'll just say, like, Paris never looked better. Like Paris in this film is so infectious to where if you're someone like me, and I know at least Hillary and I, we've talked about how we love New York City on cinema because like
Hmm.
we just get lost in that world and it has this infectious energy. This Paris where everyone is going to a movie and then going to a date afterwards, and then it's just this nonstop energy.
11 p.m. coffee.
11 p.m. Literally, it was like my dream life. It's infectious in a way where you can't help but get lost in it. But also, then when there comes to these doubts from her and she's trying to find her direction, I think in life, and this is something that I'm currently actually experiencing, where it's like, what is the allure? What's the pull of living in a big city where it's like it's more expensive, it's kind of annoying, like there's a lot of negatives, and a lot of people in life have chosen to like, okay, I'm just move to a small town where it's really cheaper and maybe sacrifice some of that living and sacrifice some of that magic in the world, if you want to say, of living in a city if you find that magic, because it's more affordable or whatever reason. And she has these doubts as she's trying to make this work. She's constantly asking to borrow money, she's trying to pay for everything, but like because the world is so well realized and because it's so infectious, you like completely understand why she would go through everything, why she would take every gig, why she would struggle as much as she possibly can to stay in the city. I thought all those elements came together to create like a really, really beautiful portrait and capturing of not just like this young woman's individual journey, but also this status of like being young and trying to find your place in life. And when you have the freedom as a young adult to like, you can live wherever, you now have to define and choose your life path and what do you value? What do you want your life to be? I felt like I was right there in Paris with her and I felt like I really was on the same wavelength. So I mean, this is kind of just scratching the surface, but I would say I really, all these elements come together to where like wildly impressed. It's a film that feels like it should not work on paper, right? Between the production, between the cutting of the story, between the distance created by the cinematography, for example, it feels like something that should not work, but like it all comes together like perfectly.
Hmm.
Amazed.
It's it's impressive. It's still incredibly impressive, especially coming off of Breathless. I don't remember which the second feature was, honestly. Um, but just this is so fully formed.
Yeah.
This is already so accomplished, so well thought out, and just impressive, even in the amounts of long takes that they do here. They're not showy. They're not um, impressive in the same way they would be if this were a proper like studio production. But even just like the second tableau, I want to say when she's inside the store working, I want to say that entire scene is just one shot where the camera is on a dolly and it's just moving and following her around as she's looking for those records for the client. And like you said, the camera gets distracted at one point and starts showing you the street behind. And you have regular people just looking at the set essentially and looking into the store. Um, Even the way he disrupts editing, and there is one moment, there's so many moments we can talk about here, scenes in every one of the tableaus, but there's one that I forgot about because I remember close-ups in this film. There's many close-ups of her face, but towards the end, I want to say tableau 11, 10 or 11, she's just having a conversation with another man, and the man is talking, and at one point it's showing her looking at the man, and it hard cuts, jump cuts to her looking straight into the lens, and it doesn't feel like a moment that was choreographed. It genuinely feels like they're just setting up the shot and they just started rolling the camera, like, okay, we're rolling, we're just waiting for like sound or whatever, or there's noise in the background, I don't know, and she's just looking straight into the lens, and it's so disarming, it's so raw, it's just like it's so real, it's almost uncomfortably real, and she's looking at you, she's looking at us, the audience. Again, he a normal film would not do that because that's wrong, because them's the rules, you don't do that, but he was breaking the rules in a way that's still so accessible, because Godard will go on to get crazier and crazier over time, especially after the 60s are over. But I do think there's something still very much powerful here in how he uses the setting as well, as you mentioned. Like, this must not have cost a lot. Probably because they're just going into regular places, just like a random cafe. I don't know, like random, like location scouting, of course, but they see like a random cafe, not in a picturesque location. It's just like a regular cafe. There's hundreds of those in Paris. They're going to just a regular bar with a billiard pool, with a pool inside. All those things. It feels so alive, but it still has this sharp cinematic quality to it. Because like Breathless, like they were shooting it as it was coming along, kind of. Even if you've seen Nouvelle Vague, it's a bit romanticized, but it's fairly close to reality. In here, it's so just stunning. It's so carefully thought out, um, and it works. I completely agree with you. Like this should not work as well as it does. To have those 12 scenes coming together and building towards a tragic ending that's even more tragic in how sudden it is. I don't know, like it's always one of those things that I find very funny about old movies, that they have all of the credits in the beginning and that's it. You get to the final shot, the end, fin, that's it, go home, movie's done, lights come up. I've experienced it a couple of times watching some of those old movies in the cinema repertoire screenings, and it's always jarring. I cannot imagine like watching something like this, a movie that literally ends in tragedy, sudden tragedy. It's almost banal by design. It's
Yeah.
just like this is such a stupid situation. Like poor girl. Oh, that's it. That's it. She's just left there. I don't want to get too much into it. Maybe if people haven't watched it, but effective. Just
It is very effective, and I think, I mean, this is a trend you've seen in a lot of older movies. So if you watch a lot of older movies, you'll see it. I think here it does actually serve like a pretty decent purpose, where there's a scene, God, I wish I remembered which part, but she's talking and kind of like reflecting about life and the philosophy of life, and she's like, well, life is life, like it will end one day, like it is what it is, right? Like you can fight it, or you could try to push it, or like whatever, but like you have to live in the moment, because you just never, like, it just, that's life.
mhm.
And you see with her life, it's building, she has all this narrative, and then what happens, and that's life. Like sometimes it just ends. It does feel almost like it's almost casual in how the film presents it. Also, I guess going into the Joan of Arc reference even further with that, but
Mhm.
it's, it is tragic, yes, absolutely. But I think it's played a little bit, as you mentioned, it's played very uniquely. It's hard to even discuss, because like it's such a charged moment for the audience and for everyone, but the film itself doesn't necessarily treat it like a charged moment. It just treats it like that's the next step of the story, which carries some poignance. I would be fascinated to see how audiences today would react to something like this, because I feel like they would just be lost. They'd be like, what happened? I guess they'd probably be like, oh, they must have rewritten the ending. But no, I mean, I agree with you. I've like never, I guess I have also not seen a lot of Godard, but just thinking about a lot of French New Wave, maybe not so Vard. I think Vard is very thought out in her work, but like every part of the story had to be so carefully considered, because of how it jumps between the different sections of her life and the sections of her journey. You
Mhm.
really couldn't film anything and just be like, I don't really know where this is going to go, or I don't know what this is. We're just going to kind of take it one day at a time. It's like it has a very like cinema verde vibe also to it, which is just like you're passively watching this. But certainly, I guess, as with the best cinema verde documentaries, very careful in the edit as far as how do you then build a narrative and how do you build a journey through that. But that absolutely goes until the end. Do you like the fact that this ends in tragedy how it does, or do you feel like this would have worked maybe a little bit better had there been more, I guess, positivity or hope at the end?
I don't know what the positive ending would be. I think honestly, like I think we can spoil it. It's 1962 film. If listeners have not, like,
I
we
think we've
cannot jump
I
around
think
it.
we've also kind of jumped over. I think we've kind of said it to a
You
point.
get it. If you haven't seen it, you get it. What happens? She dies. Okay, she gets gunned down,
Rip.
used as a human shield, which is awful. But again, it plays into the whole. Like, I mean, I don't want to be here being like, Godard was a secret feminist, okay? Like, I want to say he almost like stumbled into feminism occasionally, because there are some questionable choices he makes in some movies. But there are other times, like, I don't want to diverge, but like, you have not seen it probably, Carson. I don't remember the name in French. It's something like called Hail Mary, I think. But it's like, what if Mary Magdalene, of like, my mother of Jesus, Mary, was a teenager in France, high school France, modern times in 1980s. It's
Wrote LeFou?
um no,
No.
it's called Hail Mary. Yeah,
Oh, it's
1985.
just called Hail Mary. Okay.
Just called Hail Mary. Je vous salue Marie. That's the title. Yeah. So what if Mary was just a
Oh, there
random
it is.
teenage girl in modern day France, and she gets pregnant? Jesus, it's like he could make actually very provocative and thoughtful films about women and women's body and women autonomy. Other times, questionable. It does fall into sexism very easily as well. But
Sure.
with this film, there is this prevalent running theme right from the opening scene when she's with her boyfriend and they're kind of breaking up. Um, this is a male dominated world, and this
Mm,
woman needs to be working with men, for men. She's, even though she's breaking up with him, she's still asking him for money. Those 2,000 francs, just because she has to get home. She has to
yep.
pay rent, and she's not able to. And so she ends up resorting to sex work and selling her own body. And you can tell that she's not fine with it. But then you hear how much money she makes, and she's like, well, I also get why she continues doing it, because with one man, she ends up getting twice as much rent. So that's a deal. But then she meets this pimp, and she basically enters into this series of relationships that are all with men who use her and take
Mm,
advantage of her. And you get to the ending, and that's tragic, slightly darkly comic, I would even say, where they're doing this exchange and she's there and she gets used as a human shield. One man even shouts like, I don't care if you're using the girl, I'm gonna shoot you. And all those two sides, those two parties start shooting at each other, but they only hit her,
yeah.
and then they just run away, and she's left there on the ground and no one cares about her. And during
Mm,
the entire film you basically see no one caring about her. and
mm.
and it made me, it because I remembered the ending going into it, and I was really touched by, wait, I actually took a screenshot of it, of the opening passage by Montaigne, so
Oh my
French
gosh, you were one
writer.
of those people taking pictures of the screen?
I
Oh
did
my
this one
gosh.
time. I did this one time. Yes, I took a photo of the screen. Lend yourself to others, but give yourself to yourself.
Mm,
And again, like you mentioned as well, it plays into the Joan of Arc analogy. It's I cannot think of a positive ending that could have worked for this woman, for this story. Unfortunately, it has to end in tragedy, but in a way that I think should
yeah.
be almost a wake up call to people, or to open their eyes a little bit. Not only do I think it's for the time one of the more positive portrayals of sex work, in the sense, like you said, it's not just chaos far west, like people just doing whatever on the streets, super dirty. It's like, no, there's regulations that have to be followed, there's rules, there's
Yeah.
laws. France was ahead of its time compared to other countries. But yeah, have more love and empathy for other people, but also learn to love yourself and care about yourself, because it's so easy to lose sight of that if we're always
Yeah.
doing things for others.
Well, and even in this story, I mean, we obviously get this tale, and we're following this one girl as she goes into sex work ultimately. But throughout the film, there's scenes where she's like walking down the street, and it's almost like in like Jaws, how you get like the water, and you're like, it's the shark right
Mm.
there, where she sees like the sex workers on the street, and like she herself like has a reaction to them, and kind of like looks both like it's complex because I think it's both like looking down upon them, but also fear of like, oh my gosh, what if I have to turn to that? What if that's like my eventuality? So it's a complex work. And then obviously through the perspective of her, we get a lot more empathy for those girls. I don't think we would, for a lot of people, she would be viewed as one of those girls on the street, right? Like it's a film that I think commands empathy in that way. And I think obviously portraying the connection to Joan of Arc also really helps, I think, intellectually, just the film stay on like, no, we like her, she's doing the right thing, we're never gonna like villainize her for what she's
Mhm.
doing. She is a tragic figure in that sense.
And she's not
um
exploited. That's also something, like,
yes.
cinematically she's never exploited,
No.
she's never debased in any way. There's never violence against her, physical violence. There's never nudity forced on her. The camera doesn't even show her as sexy or sensual. There is a
Yeah.
Buñuel film, Belle de Jour, Allure with Catherine Deneuve, which oh boy, does it love showing off her body, which fair enough, good film and everything, but that goes in a more explicit direction, and they actually respect the restraint that
Mm.
Godard shows here.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I also like that in the prostitution scenes, most of the men are like pretty decent. Like it's obviously like there are some that have certain things, but like I think how they actually portray those encounters for the bits that you see of them. Yes, there's a lot that are like using her and such, but especially early on, it's not necessarily like the grid. Like I'm thinking like 1970s and 80s American cinema, where it gets very sleazy with
Oh
those
God,
scenes. This film is
yes.
never sleazy. The film is never. I mean, you mentioned the camera is never exploitive, but it just feels like even in dialogue and even in portrayal of humans on all sides, it never gets into that sleaziness that I think really would dominate how media portrays sex work very
Hmm.
quickly after this actually.
Yes.
So I appreciate that. I don't know if that's more of like a unique to Godard or unique to French New Wave and like how sex work was viewed at the time this film was being made. But I appreciate that from my perspective at least.
Yeah, I think they were also all coming from the ground up. Like none of them were
Mm,
really coming from well-off families who could
yeah.
support them and making like gigantic films or anything like that. So since everything was very independent, they were working on the streets. They had good relationships with people on the streets to make those movies and
Yeah.
survive. So I think there's definitely a more direct approach and direct knowledge of sex workers at the time, probably. And yeah, it feels like they cared. It feels like he cared about not
Yeah.
making this sleazy in any way. It's also kind of funny in a way that you can tell that all of like none of these men are at their first time. They're all
No.
like yeah, I've done this. It's like go in the room. There's never a chair in here. There's never a chair. Oh, there's never. I can never find an ashtray every time. All in these rooms, just like going through the motions. They've
Yeah.
done this before. They know how it goes. Oh, you don't have change. It's fine. Just keep it extra tip, whatever.
Yeah,
It's
even with
slightly
discussing
funny.
payment, it's like, how much money do you want? And she's like, I've never like, I don't really know what I charge. Like, what do you think? Yeah, absolutely.
It's yeah. It's cute. It's very cute, but not played for laughs in the way it would be played nowadays. Kind of, it's just like different. I do
Yes.
think in that case, Godard or no Godard, just different sensibilities as well, of the time and of the era, which is so hard to find nowadays. Something like that.
Yes, in so many ways, this film is a relic of its time, isn't it? In like pretty tragic ways. Not to keep going back to Luca, but he also did the POV shot, and like, there's so much of this movie that reminded me of After the Hunt. To be honest, not in necessarily content, but I was just like, it really saddens me that I think a lot of people like I don't know, maybe you have a different take on this being in Europe and just different circles of film, but like I think a lot of people talk about Godard. A lot of people know Godard like on a concept, but I don't think a lot of people watch Godard. I think they probably watch Breathless, especially after Nouvelle Vague, but yeah, I don't think a lot of people actually watch or talk about Godard, which is a shame. And like I haven't either. I'm 100% in this camp. I'm still learning and exploring him for the first time. Too many filmmakers out there to get through, but
True.
it is sad because I think there's probably I don't know. Do you think I? What do you think? Do you think Godard is like heavily seen in the circles that you would say, or not really?
Uh, I would say
You've seen
he's
a lot of his work.
seen. I've seen many of his films, but just because I like him. But I think the main problem. I don't want to say it's a problem, but I know for a fact that for many people of my generation, they were introduced to Godard as the villain of Faces Places by Agnes Varda. Alternatively, people were introduced to Godard as the most pretentious member of the Nouvelle Vague, the biggest snob. No one liked him, everyone hated him. Um, you see interviews with him when he was younger, when he was older. He's impenetrable. He doesn't care about you or what you think. He's just gonna say what he wants to say, and that's it. Um, so he was very standoffish, and I do think, even if you don't want to, I think honestly someone like Tarantino kind of has a similar effect, where if you really like get to know the person behind the camera, you start despising the films themselves, or like it's impossible to separate the two. But I do think Godard was like cocky for sure, not necessarily a good person or nice person, but he was also incredibly smart, and he very cleverly used his infamy to elevate the films themselves. So in Europe, he's more watched, I guess, maybe, but I very rarely find people who actually like his films or love him. More often than not, it's like complaining about like it's too much, it's too weird, it's too this, it's too that. Truffaut is so much better. Like Truffaut really got to the core of the people, and Agnes Varda as well, and blah blah blah. And like, yeah, it's fine. You can like both. I like both. I like Truffaut. It was very humanistic. I like Truffaut. I love Varda. We love Varda. We talked about Varda a lot, but I also love Godard. Um, so I think that's some of the reasons. I think that's why. But
Yeah,
there's so
I
much
also like
to learn from
Truffaut.
him. There's so
Oh
much to learn
yeah,
from him.
I think there's so much to. I mean, every single time we go into French cinema from this era, I feel like there's like a mass, like these need to be seen and like um recognize and like learn from people making films, and also like actually not only just those making films but those talking about films. And again, I'm
Hmm.
included in this. I'm not trying to say I'm above this conversation, but like it is so crazy to look at this film that has like a 3-minute segment of someone just like writing a notebook or writing a note, and like that is just cinema. Like that's, it's not like it feels, if that was today, people would be being like, this is such a bold like voice. They probably wouldn't even get it. They'd probably dismiss it and be like, this is not cinema, what is this? Actually that happened with the Mastermind, Kelly Reichardt's film. I had so
Oh
many
God,
friends be like, there's a 6-minute segment of him climbing a fucking ladder, and I'm like, absolutely yes.
and
But
he's struggling so much, and you feel it.
yeah,
That's the point.
there's so, exactly, we're on the same wavelength here. But like I feel like there's so much to be learned about like cinema has, oh god, I don't want to get into like cinema sucks, but like there's so much good cinema out there, everyone. But like we have reduced our capacity of understanding cinema and engaging with cinema and producing cinema so much when you look at something like Godard from what, 1960, I forget the exact year for this,
Two
but 19, let's see,
62.
1962. And in 2026, if you put this on screen, people would be unable to engage with it. I feel they would consider it absolutely radical and unheard of for cinema. There's so much, even the conversation here about feminism. I don't think people would actually, a lot of people, not everyone, would be able to like actually engage with the themes here. I think people would like cancel it and be like, oh my god, this is so unwoke and so dumb, and oh my god, this is so badly made. Why is it so badly made? It's just like, oh my god, it's so brutal in a sense. But I think a lot of people at the same time still do go back, still enjoy Godard, and still can enjoy this film. But I find it like really inspiring. If I was a filmmaker, which I'm not, you are, I would find this very inspiring. I feel, to be like, oh, this is, we can still do this. This is
One hundred
cinema.
percent, 100%. Especially coming off, like by the time the episode comes out, I would have been back from Berlin for a week, over a week, and I was at Berlinale, and I've seen so many dull films stylistically. It's not that every movie needs to have a very distinct style, but the handheld indie film that's very grounded and matter of fact. Once you've seen one, you've seen them all. There's very little risks being taken. I should
Mm.
not be watching a movie from 1962 and seeing people getting gunned down on the streets, and the camera cuts to the beat of the gunshots, thinking, this is sick.
Yeah.
This is so cool. Why don't we do this more?
It's interesting because it's like, why aren't we more dynamic? I think that's a great example, but there's so many shots in here that are so like, it's so dynamic and it carries such an energy, and you just get lost in it. I feel like a lot of people with international cinema or thinking of old cinema thinks it's like boring and dull. But like
Hmm.
if you compare this to like the most modern of A24 movies or whatever your studio want to cut to, like this is so, there's so much energy here, and it's just about a woman living life in Paris. There's nothing, like there's so little here that is actually dynamic on screen, but the filmmaking itself elevates the material in a way that's like, I don't know how you don't get lost in it, and then you can clearly see like, oh, that's cinema. And
Hmm.
like, I don't know, it's so fascinating to me that people are so, that not people, but cinema itself has seemingly become so adverse to like this type of
Creativity.
energy and this type of creativity. Exactly, creativity. Like you can use cinema, allows us not to get like full into our like George Millia's conversation myself and Jack had a few months back, but like cinema allows you to put your dreams on screen. It can turn the world, an average day in Paris, to like this magical adventure. And it's just like it's so wild to me that there's so many people who just like don't seem interested in that. And I get it's like algorithm and sensibilities and, streaming, and it's a million things. But
True.
I don't know, it's very weird, but at least like it is nice knowing that in life you get to choose how you spend your time, and you can spend, there's enough older cinema that you can spend your life enjoying older cinema. Like, it's not going to run out. I'm not going to run out of probably even Godard films. He's made a shit ton of movies. I would have to work really hard for a long time to watch every Godard film. So I guess that's like reassuring. And even on this podcast, I appreciate that we have picked like these random filmmakers and we go back and we're like, oh my God, this is incredible. We can go through their films and like, fill our time with that, because it's like, I don't know, it fills my soul with an energy where it's like, yeah, this is why I love movies. Like, I think it's really easy to fall out of love with movies if you just focus on new releases. So
Yeah.
and not that there's not good filmmakers releasing good movies. There's so many great, incredible, amazing masterpieces coming out every single year that I would put on a pedestal like this. But I am happy we have like this rich, cave that we can just constantly go and watch new old movies from, because it's fantastic. I would love to see this in a theater. Have you seen a Godard film in a theater?
I don't think so. I remember they
Yeah.
screened Breathless maybe when Godard died, actually, but I didn't go because I was working, sadly.
Sure.
So I couldn't make it. But yeah, no, I would love to watch any of his movies in the cinema,
Ugh.
honestly. Even something like this, like you were saying, like I consider this to be a full meal type film. Like, it has
Yes.
everything. It has those slow scenes, it has the long shots, it has the quick cuts, it has the montages. But even the scene of Joan of Arc, like we didn't mention it, it's completely in silence except for one line, which I think is just the guy next to her just saying the actress name. I think it just says like Falconetti, just like that. That's the only line in the entire scene for like 3 or 4 minutes, and it's glorious. It's beautiful, and again, it jumps back and forth. It has a scene with a song in the background as she's looking around a cafe, which is delightful. It's constantly, or it's almost like the film itself is constantly reinventing itself until it ends in this bland, banal, flat, wide shot, which is just so matter of fact, far away, cold, sad, empty. Just like, yeah, Godard, we're saying something shocking here. Godard knew how to make a movie.
Right. Who could have
Bold
predicted?
statements.
Also, though, we have to mention this all it accomplishes, this big journey, everything we've talked about as far as experimenting and these 12 scenes, it all takes place in 84 minutes,
Yes.
which is insane, which
Yes.
is wild how effectively quick and focused this movie is, to where it does feel like a full meal. I agree completely. This is not like a film where I'm like, oh, it's a short little thing. Like, no, this feels like it has depth. I could write an essay on this. Like, there's a lot here. But it's so tight. It never lingers. Or when it lingers, it's very purposeful and lingering. Like, truly a magical ability. At a time where every movie feels like it has to be 110 minutes, what a proof of concept that like an 84-minute film can be everything you need.
Yeah,
Wow.
scenes of full silence, and then a scene where she's just talking to an actual real life philosopher, just having a conversation with him about life and love. Sure. Gripping also, like, honestly, that entire sequence is gripping. I like, it's almost hard to stay on top of the subtitles because the conversation is moving so quickly. You're like, okay, let me read, see her face, read. But it's intoxicating, and I love that the conversation they're having goes back to also mentioning like Plato, and what he was talking about still resonates with us. And you and I are here talking 64 years later about a movie that still resonates with us and talks with us, and just the importance of art and the importance of preserving culture. And again, I'm not French, you're not French, but we managed to enjoy something that comes from a different time, a different place, a different language, and it still touches us.
That's
and
art.
the conversation is in the film, like, it's so
That's
cool.
art. Plato
That's
still
art.
inspires us. I still cry at Orpheus. Like, if I think about that myth too much, like, that's the power of art. Absolutely. And I love that this film is having a conversation on so much art, not just earlier cinema with Joan of Arc, but it does talk about Plato. It talks about a lot of concepts and ideas that are just like very buried in like the core of like conversations on society and humanity. Because also, like, I think the thing about art and about like society in general is like, Plato was a human. These people in 1962 were humans. we sitting here today in 2026, we are humans. While the actual context and picture around us has changed, these emotions and these concerns and these fears and these hopes and dreams and desires, maybe again, specifics change. But those core emotions are still human. It connects us all. And art allows, oh my God, this is like, I don't know if this is the best episode or worst episode of this podcast we've ever done. Because I'm just like, I feel
Fitting
like
for Godard.
a community college professor with like ethics 101 or whatever. But like, that's the beauty of art though. It's like, it connects us all. I love that I can view this woman in 1962 and be like, in France, and be like, oh my God, I feel this emotion. And then these conversations with this philosopher, we can engage with, and we can have a conversation with them. Granted, a very one-sided conversation. They cannot hear us. Actually, I would recommend Anna. She's still going. She is her Criterion Closet collection video where she goes to the Criterion Closet is very fun. But yeah, I don't know. That's inspiring. It's inspiring. I love that this movie like made me love cinema again. Not that I didn't love cinema before today, but like it really reminded me of like, this is why we do it.
It would be interesting to see how you would feel then diving deeper into Godard's filmography, because it can either work really well and just get better and better, or I think you might hit like a point where you just turn on him, which I would totally understand when it goes into like full video art.
Sure,
but it's an experience. It's an experience with time.
I must have
time.
I must clarify that Anna Karenina is dead. Actually, 2019 passed away, unfortunately.
Yeah, it was like
so she's not. So she's not still going. But you know what? Like recent enough that she has a Criterion video, so you can check that out. I'm very interested in Godard. Like again, didn't love Breathless, but I think especially if he has the style and like energy that he brings to this, I'm open to the experience. I do question like when I get to like Goodbye to Language, really anything after like 2004, I do question if that will do anything for me. But like, I'm open to this experience. Again, there's a ton of films. There's like, if you go on Letterboxd, just like line after line of good cinema.
Honestly, the next one you should watch in that case, probably Pierrot le Fou, which also is Anna Karenina, and it's in color, and it's gonna feel like you're watching The Wizard of Oz for the first time. It's like, I didn't know films could look this colorful.
Oh, that's exciting.
It's
I'll add that to the list for sure. Because
it's a movie I think I would love rewatching it, because I really liked it back then, but there's just scenes and passages that have stuck with me for years. So probably 5 stars now, but yeah.
I'll check that out. I also need to revisit. I realize now I've also seen In Praise of Love, his 2001 film. I didn't love it.
Oh, wow.
But I am willing to revisit it, because that was years ago. It was 2021, and I feel like I've grown a lot with how I view and engage with cinema since then. So I would be curious to revisit that. But yeah, a big wide filmography. But again, so many films to watch. I just, again, spent a month personally watching Indian cinema, and it's just like, you just dive into any country, and I love it. It's inspiring, but it's also like deeply depressing when you have to realize like, I will never see every film. I will never experience every country's greatest hits, and I'll never, I will die not seeing someone's film. But Godard, I hope to see. Well, it's true. Like, I don't know, a lot of people die without saying. You will probably die without knowing how great SRK is as an actor from Indian cinema, and that's okay. It's just it's a depressing thought, but I guess it's nice knowing there's so much to get to. Alas,
always something to look forward to.
Yes, always something to look forward to. I think we both highly recommend this film. Is there anything left with this film that you would like to cover before we start to wrap up today?
Just the power of the close-up, I think.
Yes.
We mentioned it, but there's so many shots in here, whether it's, again, the back of the head in the beginning, the hands, the shots of the cigarettes being lit, that close-up in the cinema, it's just like chock full. And even, I think that's why the last shot is so powerful and jolts you a little bit, because there's not really a proper wide shot in the entire film. There are larger scapes, larger shots, of course, wider shots, but nothing as wide as that. Everything else is always a bit more intimate, a bit closer to the characters, but the way especially it gets up close to the hands And the montage as well,
Mm.
where she's meeting all of the Johns and is quickly cutting with like hands and shoulders, and they're entering the door, 5 people entering the door, and it constantly moves back and forth and back and forth. It's something that we take for granted. I think simply because you can
Mm.
get the camera close to something doesn't mean you always have to get the camera that close, but
Mm.
it can be so powerful. And I agree
Yeah.
with what you were saying. Like, I wish I could have seen this in the cinema, because I've always been in favor, especially after starting to attending film festivals almost a decade ago. Watching even the simplest of dramas on a big screen with people is so much more magical. And you see those giant faces. It's That's cinema.
Oh
That's
yeah,
cinema.
and then there's the scene here where it starts to take the camera angles of Joan of Arc on her face. Phenomenal. I will say a passionate ploy to two different groups here. Number one, if you're just an average consumer of cinema, you don't go to film festivals or such. AMC and Regal especially this year for some reason, they have so many older films they're starting to put into theaters. Like it's a big, like I would say, movement with cinema to start
Nice.
including some of these retroactive or retrospective features. Go check some of those out. And if you go to a film festival, group number two here, almost every film festival has some programming that's like older cinema. And I know you go to a film festival and you want to see the big premieres. I get it. I do too. And my focus is there too. But it might be your only chance to see like some masters on the big screen. Again, literally, I think big and small, most film festivals have at least some older films they program. Just give it a look and maybe choose one. Similar to how I think if you go to a film festival, choose one or two like smaller independents that you don't really know about that isn't the big premieres. Like just try to space it out. But if it fits, I would just highly recommend that, because I will say I have found so much power recently overseeing older films on the big screen, and it's just like I wish I could see every film on the big screen, but highly recommend those experiences. But yeah, here, I mean, I'll just say like I'm still jazzed about this film. It's so well crafted. It's a film that every element is like so thought out, and it just again on paper like should not work to have these little 12 vignettes throughout this woman's career, or woman's life, to
Hmm.
have it be so abrasive, to have it be so putting you as an observer. It all just feels like a recipe for it not working. But because of Godard, and I think it is, we can put solely on Godard's shoulders. I mean, everyone else is operating fantastically here in front of the camera, behind the camera. Not to say this is a one-man production, but it's clear this film has a certain vision to it,
Oh
that it
yes.
all comes together, and that vision I do contribute to Godard. So a pretty remarkable film and experience here talking about it. With that, you can find this film as well as Godard's entire filmography, most of his filmography at least, mostly streaming on Criterion Channel here in America and HBO Max. I think they're pretty widely available pretty much no matter where you go. So in Italy, are they available like on streaming or?
Yeah, whether it's like the movie or
or
Right Play,
yeah.
for people who know Right Play. Some right, most almost of them are Right Play.
Yeah, so I would recommend you give a couple a go, especially a couple are there's quite a few short ones. Just watch some older cinema, have some fun. I'm shocked if you're at this far into this podcast and you don't watch older cinema, but alas, thank you for being here. With that, let's go to question of the week, because my question of the week I asked is inspired by myself finally getting Godard and being like, oh my gosh, in our conversation we had today, there's so much cinema. Everyone has some directors that are like legendary directors, or whatever that term means for you, whether it's really popular or critically well received or whatever your terminology is, that are on our watch list that we just haven't really got to. Maybe you've seen a film or two, but like still there's so much to explore. I want to know what directors are you most like on the verge of climbing that mountain but you just haven't done yet. So Nick, I'll turn it over to you. What directors are on your watch list?
It's kind of embarrassing, because at first I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be hard," but then I thought, "Oh no, I actually know some directors that I still am like, yeah, I'll get to them. I'll get to them sooner or later." Um, I have three of them written down. One of them, fitting, because also a French filmmaker, kind of a contemporary of Godard, I want to say. Yeah, 1942, but died in 1995, a bit younger. Louis Malle. Louis Malle, who made My Dinner with Andre, Elevator to the Gallows, Au revoir les enfants, like, big films. I haven't seen any of them. The only one I've seen of his was part of an anthology, so I don't really count it as having seen any proper Louis Malle film. So I really want to watch his works, because I think it's the last big French filmmaker that I'm missing at this point. For the English language, this might actually shock you. I've not seen a single Mike Lee film. Not one. I've not seen Naked. I've not seen Secret and Lies, Happy Go Lucky, freaking Mr. Turner, nothing. I've not seen a single Mike Lee film, even Hard Truths from like last year, 2 years ago. How is that possible? I don't know. I ask myself that many times, but it's just the number is staying at zero right now. I really need to sit down and watch it. I actually would like to watch in the next month or so Secret and Lies, but I'm sorry. And the last shameful filmmaker that I've not seen any works of, but I think less controversial than this too, Pedro Costa, Portuguese filmmaker. His movies look right up my alley, but they always felt daunting. I think we saw like a clip from one of his movies back in film school, and it felt similarly to Lucrezia Martel with La Ciénaga. We watched the opening of La Ciénaga, and I was like, this looks like a great film, but I feel like I need to be in the right mood for it. I never felt the right mood for it in the past 6 years. Same thing with Pedro Costa. I think I would love Pedro Costa, but I've not watched his films yet. But I also wonder if now we're talking about these shameful secrets and skeletons in our closets, maybe I will feel the push to actually start watching them. And probably like starting short, I think, like shorter films, classics, one for each, and build it up from there.
Everyone bully Nick until he does. No, this is not. There's no shame in. I think everyone. There's no shame in admitting you haven't seen something, right? Like we all live lives. We all, view whatever we do. Bit. Well, I wasn't going to say that, but not even Hard Truths is kind of wild, but that's okay.
I know.
For me, I have quite a few. Obviously, Godard's on here. Fellini's on here. Wong Kar-wai. I've seen. What is that? I've seen In the Mood for Love, but I haven't seen any of his other films.
Oh,
so I
interesting.
Definitely need to check out his career. And then also this one is not. I feel like a lot of people would be like, you don't really need to explore this guy's filmography, but I haven't seen a lot of Pasolini, and specifically because of Theorem, which is the film that inspired. Oh my gosh, I love that I just keep going to things and I don't know the names. Inspired The Visitor.
Yeah.
I love that movie. I gave it 5 stars. I thought it was like genuinely an incredible film when it comes to like lust and desire, and like it really for like 2 days it was my obsession film. So I'm like, no, I know I didn't like 120 Days of Solo or whatever. Like that didn't do much for me, but I do want to go into this guy's filmography because I feel like there might be some gems here that like people don't really talk about or ignore. So those,
especially talking about queer cinema, like 100% Pasolini. I'm there with you, man. If you want to do an episode, I'll rewatch any of these movies.
Hey, any of these filmmakers we'll jump in on. With that, let's go to our rapid reviews. Anything we've seen recently that we haven't discussed on the podcast. One, I would put them on this guy on the list before this last month I hadn't seen the Apu trilogy, which I must say I did not love. I saw your reviews afterwards and I was like, oh, wow, okay, thank God, because I thought I was like the freak who didn't love these. It's fine. I think the first one has some poignant points about this like social movement of leaving the rural towns behind to go into the city and kind of being pushed into the city. The rest was just like a lot of melodrama. I didn't think it really built well as a trilogy. Didn't do a lot for me, especially that last one really just left me on a really cold note, to be honest. I saw Baz Luhrmann's Epic, which stands for Elvis Presley in Concert. So camp that they did that. Transcendent. I mean, I'm not even a huge Elvis fan, but it really like not just seeing his performances on the big screen, because it's something I've not really seen a lot of Elvis, to be clear, outside of the movie. But seeing him in like these recording sessions and just kind of breaking down this myth to be like, oh no, this is the guy. This is how he interacts with others. Granted, he's obviously still putting on some level of performance. But I found that to be really electric. And finally, I believe you saw this one a while ago, Mikel Franco's Dreams, I saw, starring Jennifer Chastain. Oh my God. Some people are sleeping on this. Number one, I think Franco's a fantastic director. Yes. I think like when it comes to political filmmakers, he is one of our strongest voices right now. Every film, I think, is a wonderful look at power and looking at privilege and all these, political upheaval, if you're looking at New Order and stuff. I thought Dreams was phenomenal, looking at the relationship between a very wealthy woman and this undocumented ballet dancer, obviously made even more poignant by what's happened in the last year as far as ICE and such. But looking at that inherent imbalance of power and this concept of control, I thought it was very poignant looking at the undocumented immigrant experience. Fantastic performances. Chastain is great here. Isaac Hernandez also needs to be recognized. Phenomenal. Like I would say like two early contenders for my personal awards of the year. Like I really love this film. So I think a lot of people are sleeping on it, sadly, which is sad because
Also
New Order
so
was great,
dark.
Sundown was great, Memory was great. Yeah, this is great. I mean, it does what all of his films do, where it starts out kind of sweet and like hopeful, and you're like, maybe the world is great, maybe the world is good, and then it like rips that all away from you, and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot like systemically the world kind of sucks. And when it's systemic like that, it's really hard to combat or really hard to just like ignore. But still, I think very worthwhile to watch. So would highly, highly recommend. Nick, what have you seen recently?
Well, I came back from the Berlinale, so I thought, why don't I just very quickly talk about some of my favorite films that I've seen at the festival? In no particular order. This is going to be like title overdose. I apologize. It's 9 films. Yo, Love is a Rebellious Bird. I think, Carson, you would really like this one. It's a documentary that took over a decade to make about a woman. She was like 24 who became friends with a 74-year-old immigrant in LA, I think, San Francisco, I don't remember, like West Coast states. So delightful. It uses animation as well in a very clever way to recreate the woman's house. There's a lot of archival footage, just like, a warm hug. It's a warm hug of a film. Yo, Love is a Rebellious Bird. Probably coming to Netflix. It has like that Netflix vibe to it. Josephine from Sundance was screening there as well. People were raving about it. Deservedly so. It's a very strong film. A bit too long. I've seen so many movies where I think, okay, I get it. You're a good film, but I get it. You don't need to be over 2 hours long. But again, it's very well made. Channing Tatum and Gemma Chan are great. The young girl, let me look at her name, Mason Reeves, who plays a titular character, outstanding. She pulls an incredible performance, especially considering how many scenes are long takes and they go on for minutes. Great. Testament of Anne Lee, also from last year. I finally watched it there. Terrific. I cannot wait to rewatch it again because I think it will grow even more on me. But there's so much to talk about there. Maybe a podcast episode in the future, who knows? The Day She Returns, Aung San Suu, a necessary 1 out of 3 movies he makes every year. Fun, 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 fun. Just good conversations, clever structure. People should definitely seek this one out. Flies, aka Moscas, produced by Michel Franco, a Mexican film. It's not like a Michel Franco film. It's heartwarming, absolutely heartwarming. A little kid is stuck at home. His father is like trying to cover for his like trying to attend elderly dying not elderly like dying mother in the hospital, and the kid is just by himself, and he starts developing a friendship with the woman whose house he's staying in, and it's just super cute, very nice, very sweet, not dark, which feels nice sometimes. So Flies, aka Moscas. No Good Man, it was the opening film of Berlinale, a very rare Afghan film set in Kabul before the return of the Taliban's in the early 2020s, and it's focusing on a woman who's a journalist, television journalist, who's television journalist, camera operator. I don't know if that's the actual term. Who's trying to fight, sexism in the workplace and the fact that there are no good men in Kabul, in Afghanistan. But maybe there are. Maybe one of the journalists who works there is actually a good man. It's a type of movie where I was like, oh, this is very sweet, this is very nice, everything is fine. And then it just like the final scene happens, and then just like hard cuts to credits, and I started crying. I was like, oh my god, the emotions just like crept up on me. It was great. Other movie that also crept up on me emotionally, Only Rebels Win, is a Lebanese film. Kind of an ode to Douglas Sirk and also Fassbinder, especially Ali, Fear Eats the Soul. It's almost a remake of Ali, Fear Eats the Soul. But the notable thing is that this film was supposed to be shot in Beirut, but because of the Israeli airstrikes on the city and in Lebanon, they ended up having to shoot everything in a studio in France, but they projected the actual locations they would have shot in. They went in Beirut, they shot the locations, and then they projected them on the wall. It's a trippy effect, but they managed to sustain it for a whole movie that's over 90 minutes long, and it works, and you forget about it, and it's very, very impressive. Last proper film of the festival was Chronicles from the Siege, which is a Palestinian film, which is harrowing to watch in a way. It's just like untitled city, unnamed city that's under siege. It's been under siege for a long time. There are portrayals of starvation that are deeply upsetting. There are also many, many moments of goodness and humanity. There's an entire sequence that's about one guy just trying to get laid during all of this, and it's amazing. It's just like, where there's a will, there's a way. It's covers so many topics and so many things in such an honest way that was absolutely infectious. So Chronicles from the Siege, I think we will hear about this coming towards the end of the year. I think it's not only important but just a good fucking film. First time director, I want to say, for fiction cinema as well, which is insane. I don't know how they pulled some of those things off. And lastly, I did watch, you were talking about repertory screenings and all that. I did go watch Bamboozled. They had a 35 millimeter print of it during the festival, and it was amazing with Dutch subtitles. Why not? It was great. Watching it with a crowd who was laughing for the first half, because Bamboozled is a very funny film and it's very provocative and very bold, but then it gets really dark. And man, the silence in that screening room by the time the credits hit, golden. So, there were some very good films at the festival. I didn't love any of them in a way that's like, oh, they're the best I've ever seen or something like that. But still, like you said, there is good cinema coming out nowadays. And as you heard, most of it is not from the States or from Britain. There's other worlds, there's other countries. A lot of good Middle Eastern cinema, Arab cinema, honestly. I was surprised. I watched even a Pakistani film that was kind of like a weird uh, mixture of romance, horror, comedy. It's just like, why not? Sure, why not? So yeah, cinema is alive. It's vibrant. There's hope.
Love it. No, absolutely. This week I'm seeing Spike Lee's Get on the Bus for the first time on the big screen, so I'm very excited for that. Spike Lee is such a great director. If anyone likes Spike Lee, obviously Uncut Gems you have to recommend,
Oh
because they
yes,
did every single Spike Lee film. They spent an entire year just doing every Spike Lee film, which is like, what a project, but love that so much. So go check them out if you like Spike Lee. But yes, so much good cinema out there. Quickly just plugging what we've recently released on ClapperCast. As I mentioned, I did a Indian cinema marathon. One of those was watching K3G, which I did an episode with Alina with. Alina grew up with that film, so it was very fun talking about one of her all-time favorites. Just a remarkable film, actually, if I'm being honest. So I would recommend that episode. Myself, Yaka from Uncut Gems, and Hillary White. We just did Cavalcade as part of our Best Picture Rewind, so you can check that out soon. Obviously, we released this, but coming up soon, we should have reviews for The Bride. This month for our Best Picture Rewind, we have The Great Ziegfeld with Hillary. We should be covering Godzilla versus Space Godzilla. And then, Nick, you'll be back at the end of the month. Me, you, and Hillary, we are all going to watch The House That Jack Built. Not Jack Luke Sharp, to be clear. Hopefully not. But a very interesting film that I'm sure we can have plenty of debate about. One that definitely got a reaction. You want to talk about provocative cinema being released now and how that gets translated to general audiences. Whole conversation you can have about the release of that film.
Oh, we'll get there.
But without further ado, yes. Nick, where can we find your work online?
You can find my short films and videos, but at this point, primarily just short films on YouTube and Vimeo at Enjoy the Movies. You can stay up with my reviews and film festival updates, because I'm happy to say I'm officially doing festival run, I guess, for my short film Never My Love. Won Best Horror Short recently at the Berlin Short Film Festival, which was surprising and unexpected. And I'm going to Amsterdam soon, so if you want to stay up to date with all those things, follow me on Instagram at NickyGrind97 and Letterboxd, also NickyGrind97. And you can listen to my own podcast as well, Anatomy of an Adaptation. Carson is sometimes a guest there. Lots of lovely people come guest on it, where we talk about books and film adaptations. So yeah, check that out.
Great. And you can find Clapper on Twitter at Clapper Podcast. We also have our Patreon where we post monthly bonus episodes if you want even more podcasting, as well as just bonus videos. People make random bonus videos. Hillary made a video talking about how she finds films, because we always talk about how unique her letterboxd is with watching such unique content. So she goes through her process. Every month I do a new release preview where I preview the new releases for the month. So a lot of good stuff, a lot of fun stuff happening on ClapperCast as always. But with that, we will see you next time right here. Goodbye.